She was humiliated for reaching for a cake until she whispered, "It's for my little brother." A quiet billionaire followed her into the snow, never expecting an abandoned building, a sick child, and a choice that would shatter his old life and create a family born from kindness. Snow fell softly over Harbor Point, turning the city into a muted painting of white and gray. Inside Briar and Crumb Bakery, warmth gathered in the air, steam from coffee cups, the scent of fresh bread, the low hum of quiet conversations. At the same corner table sat Calder Reed, 31 years old. To most people, he was just another early customer, dark navy coat, simple watch, calm posture. No bodyguards. No phone glued to his hand. No sign that he owned one of the fastest-growing development firms on the coast. Calder liked it that way. After inheriting Reed Shore Development, he had stepped away from interviews and galas. He believed thinking required anonymity. His father had once told him, "You understand people better when they don't know who you are." Calder never forgot that. Every morning he ordered the same thing, black coffee, cinnamon bread, and reviewed plans for a housing project he cared about deeply. Not luxury towers, affordable homes, warm homes, places where people didn't have to choose between heat and food. The bell above the door rang. Cold air rushed in, followed by a small figure wrapped in winter that didn't quite fit. Calder looked up instinctively. The girl was young, about 10, but her posture carried a weight that didn't belong to children. Her coat was thin. Her knit hat was faded. Snow clung to her boots as she stepped inside and stopped just past the doorway, as if unsure whether she was allowed to be there. She didn't ask for help. She didn't look at anyone. She only stared at the glass display of sandwiches with an intensity that made Calder's chest tighten. Something about her silence felt louder than words. Calder closed his laptop halfway. He didn't know it yet, but this was the last quiet morning of his life. The girl stayed near the pastry case, hands tucked deep into her sleeves. She wasn't browsing. She was measuring, counting, deciding whether hope was worth the risk of disappointment. Behind the counter, Kendra Voss, the morning clerk, glanced up. Her voice was firm, but not unkind, tired more than anything else. "Sweetheart, are you planning to buy something?" The girl flinched, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. I'm just looking," she said quickly. Calder watched from his table, unease crawling under his calm exterior. He had seen hunger before on spreadsheets and statistics, but this was different. This was hunger standing in front of him, wearing a child's face. The girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a small pile of coins. She poured them into her palm and counted once. Then again, her lips moved silently, like she was trying to change the numbers by believing harder. She pointed to a sandwich. "How much is that one?" $6.50, Kendra replied. The girl's shoulders dropped. The coins weren't even close. For a moment, she just stood there. The bakery felt suddenly too quiet, like everyone was waiting for something to happen, but didn't want to be part of it. The girl glanced at the sandwich again. Her hand lifted, slow, hesitant, not stealing, not yet. Just reaching. Kendra straightened. "Honey, please don't do that. If you need help, you have to ask." The girl froze. Color rushed to her cheeks, not from anger, but shame. Then her eyes filled and the truth slipped out before she could stop it. "It's for my brother," she whispered. "He hasn't eaten since yesterday." Calder's laptop closed with a soft click, and this time he stood up. The words hung in the air like falling snow, quiet, unavoidable. Some customers looked away, others pretended to check their phones. No one moved, except Calder. He crossed the bakery in long, steady steps, stopping beside the girl instead of in front of her so she wouldn't feel cornered. "2 ham and cheese sandwiches," he said to the counter. "2 hot chocolates, and 2 chocolate muffins." Kendra blinked, then nodded, already reaching for the bags. Calder turned to the girl, lowering his voice. "Does that sound okay?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes searched his face, cautious, calculating. Kindness had conditions in her world. Finally, she gave a small nod. "What's your name?" Calder asked. Another pause. Then barely audible Maisie. "I'm Calder." When the food was ready, Calder paid and gently offered the bag. Maisie stared at it like it might disappear if she touched it too fast. "It's just food," Calder said quietly. "For you and your brother. That's all." Her fingers closed around the bag at last. She held it tight against her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. She didn't smile. She didn't relax. She turned and hurried out into the snow, as if staying any longer might break the spell. Calder returned to his table, but the numbers on his screen meant nothing now. All he could see was a thin coat, small hands, and the way Maisie had clutched that bag like it was the difference between today and nothing. Outside, snow fell heavier. Calder grabbed his coat. He told himself he was just going for air, but deep down he knew the truth. Some choices don't let you walk away. The bell above the bakery door chimed again as Maisie disappeared into the snowfall. Calder hesitated just for a heartbeat. This wasn't his life. He had meetings, deadlines, a schedule planned weeks in advance. People expected him to be somewhere else doing something important. And yet the image of that girl clutching a paper bag like it was her last defense against the world refused to leave him. Calder stepped outside, the cold bit immediately sharp and clean. Snow fell thicker now, blurring the edges of the street. Maisie walked fast, head down, weaving through pedestrians with practiced precision. She didn't look lost. She looked experienced. Calder followed at a careful distance. Not close enough to scare her, not far enough to lose her. As they moved farther from the bakery, the neighborhood shifted. Bright storefronts gave way to older buildings, fewer lights, cracked sidewalks. Snow piled unevenly along the curbs, untouched by city crews. Maisie crossed streets without hesitation, boots slipping slightly but never stopping. Calder noticed how often she glanced at reflections in windows not behind her, but sideways. A habit formed from needing to know who was nearby without drawing attention. The wind picked up. Calder pulled his coat tighter. She walks this every day, he realized, in this cold. Maisie turned down a narrow side street. The noise of traffic faded, replaced by a hollow quiet. Calder slowed, scanning his surroundings. This wasn't danger, it was neglect. A place forgotten rather than feared. At the end of the block stood an old brick building, its windows dark patches of plywood nailed where glass used to be. Maisie slipped through a gap in a chain-link fence and disappeared behind it. Calder stopped at the curb. Every instinct told him this was the moment to turn back. Instead, he crossed the street. Up close, the building looked tired more than broken. Once red bricks dulled by years of weather. A fire escape rusted into stillness. No lights behind the windows. Maisie didn't enter through the front. She circled to the back, pushing through a loose panel in the fence. Calder followed, careful not to make noise. The snow muffled his steps, the silence pressing close. A service door hung slightly open. Inside, the air smelled damp old plaster dust and cold. Calder paused just inside eyes, adjusting to the dim light filtering through broken windows. Footsteps echoed softly above. Calder moved slowly, aware of every sound. The stairwell creaked under his weight, metal steps complaining with each careful step upward. First floor. Second. On the third floor, he heard her voice, clear, relieved, lighter than it had been in the bakery. "Oh," and Maisie said, "I brought food." Calder stopped. He didn't mean to listen. He just couldn't stop himself. A smaller voice answered, thin but excited. "Really, really," Maisie said. "Sandwiches and hot chocolate. I kept it warm as long as I could." Calder's chest tightened. He edged closer to a half-open doorway and looked inside. The space was barely an apartment anymore. No real walls. No furniture beyond a thin mattress on flattened cardboard. A bucket tucked discreetly into a corner. Plastic bottles of water lined neatly near the wall. Maisie knelt beside a small boy wrapped in layers that didn't match, but clearly mattered. Owen smiled up at her like she'd brought him the sun. Calder felt something shift inside him, slow, irreversible. These children weren't hiding. They were surviving. Maisie unwrapped the sandwich with careful hands, breaking it in half before giving the larger piece to Owen. She poured the hot chocolate into a chipped cup, blowing on it before holding it to his lips. "Slow," she said gently. "It's hot." Owen obeyed, eyes never leaving her face. Calder watched from the doorway, heart pounding not with fear, but with the weight of what he was witnessing. There was no adult here, no supervision, no safety net. Just a 10-year-old girl holding the world together with determination and duct tape hope. A floorboard creaked beneath Calder's shoe. Maisie's head snapped up instantly. She stood in one motion, stepping directly in front of Owen, arms slightly outstretched without realizing it. Not dramatic, automatic. "Who's there?" she demanded. Calder stepped into view, slowly, palms open. "It's me, Calder, from the bakery." Her eyes narrowed. "You followed me." "Yes," he said simply. "I was worried." Maisie's jaw tightened. Nobody helps for free. Calder felt the truth of that land hard. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just wanted to make sure you weren't alone." "We are alone," Maisie shot back. "But we're fine." Owen peeked around her arm, curiosity winning over caution. "You're the food man," he said. Calder smiled softly. "I guess I am." Maisie didn't move. She stayed planted like a wall. Calder took a slow breath. "This place isn't safe," he said carefully, "especially in winter." Maisie lifted her chin. "We've been through worse." Owen coughed, a small, rough sound that lingered too long. Maisie glanced back at him, concern flickering across her face before she forced it away. Calder saw it all. "I can bring blankets," he offered. "Food, medicine, tomorrow morning." Maisie studied him for a long moment. "Tomorrow," she said finally. "But don't tell anyone." Calder nodded. "I won't." As he turned to leave, he knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow wasn't optional anymore. Calder didn't sleep that night. The city outside his penthouse was quiet snow settling softly on rooftops and streets, but inside his mind, everything stayed awake. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maisie standing in front of her brother, like a shield, small, stubborn, unyielding. He replayed Owen's cough again and again. Not loud, not dramatic, just wrong. Before dawn, Calder was already moving. He filled a cart at a 24-hour store with careful intention, bread, soup, fruit, shelf. Stable milk, bottled water, children's vitamins, fever reducer with clear dosing instructions, a digital thermometer, thick thermal blankets, wool socks, gloves, 2 winter hats, one small, one smaller. Nothing extravagant, nothing excessive, only what a responsible adult would bring. Back at the apartment, he laid everything out on the kitchen counter, checking labels twice. He wasn't improvising, he was preparing. As the sun crept up over Harbor Point, Calder stood by the window staring down at the city he thought he understood. Boardrooms, blueprints, market forecasts. All of it felt suddenly thin compared to a 10-year-old calculating how many coins stood between her brother and hunger. He picked up his phone and canceled his morning meeting without explanation. Then he loaded the supplies into his car. Snow still fell when he reached the old brick building. Calder parked farther away than necessary, not wanting to announce himself. He carried the bags carefully, shoulders aching under their weight, but he welcomed the feeling. On the 3rd floor, he knocked gently. "Maisie," he called. "It's Calder." No answer. He knocked again, softer. When the door finally opened, the look on Maisie's face told him something was wrong before she said a word. "He didn't get better," she whispered. Calder stepped inside and knew this day was going to change everything. Owen lay curled on the mattress, breathing shallowly. His cheeks were flushed, a stark contrast to the cold air creeping through the broken window. Maisie knelt beside him, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead with careful patience. Calder set the bags down slowly, like sudden movement might make things worse. "How long?" he asked gently. "Since last night," Maisie said. He kept shaking. "I tried everything I know." There was no panic in her voice, only exhaustion, the kind that comes from staying strong too long. Calder knelt and pulled out the thermometer. "Can we check his temperature?" Maisie hesitated for half a second, then nodded. They waited together as the device beeped. The number made Calder's chest tighten. "That's high," he said calmly, "but we can help." He read the medicine label aloud, explaining each step, so Maisie stayed part of the process. He measured the dose carefully and handed it to her, not taking control away. Maisie helped Owen swallow the medicine, whispering encouragement the entire time. "Good job," she murmured. "You're doing great." Owen opened his eyes briefly. "I'm cold," he said. Calder unfolded one of the thermal blankets and gently draped it over him. The boy sighed, relaxing just a little. They waited. Minutes passed. Then more. Owen's breathing stayed tight. His cough returned, still small but deeper now. Calder looked around the room again. The thin mattress, the cold draft, the absence of anything resembling safety. "Maisie," he said quietly, "this might not be enough." Her jaw tightened instantly. "We can't go to the hospital." "I know you're scared," Calder said, "but he needs a doctor. They'll ask questions," she said. "They'll take us apart." Calder met her eyes. "Look at me. I won't let that happen." She searched his face for lies and found none, only resolve. Owen shifted under the blanket, whimpering softly. Maisie's voice broke for the first time. "If you take him, let me go with him." Calder nodded without hesitation. Every step. The decision settled between them. They didn't rush. They moved with purpose. Calder wrapped Owen securely, lifted him carefully, and Maisie grabbed a small bag containing clothes and a worn teddy bear. Together they left the room. The snow had thickened by the time they reached the street. Calder carried Owen with steady arms, shielding his face from the wind. Maisie walked close beside him, one hand gripping the strap of her bag, the other never leaving Owen's blanket. The car felt warm immediately, an unfamiliar comfort. Calder secured Owen in the back seat as gently as possible, adjusting the blanket and seatbelt with care. Maisie climbed in beside him without being asked. As Calder pulled away from the curb, the city blurred into white streaks beyond the windshield. No music, no radio, only the sound of the heater and Owen's quiet breathing. Maisie watched the road, tense but focused, as if memorizing the route in case she ever had to walk it alone again. "Where are we going?" Owen asked weakly. "To see a doctor," Calder said calmly. "They're going to help you feel better." "Are we in trouble?" Owen asked. Maisie answered before Calder could. "No. We're just getting help." Calder glanced at her in the rearview mirror, grateful. The hospital lights appeared through the snow like a promise. Bright, steady, unafraid of the dark. Inside, everything moved quickly but kindly. Nurses acted without alarm. A doctor listened. A blanket replaced another blanket. Maisie stayed close, holding Owen's hand, while Calder spoke with staff, explaining carefully, truthfully. No one raised their voice. No one accused. No one tried to pull them apart. When Owen was finally settled, oxygen steady, fever being monitored, Calder exhaled for the first time in hours. Maisie looked up at him, eyes red but dry. "You said you wouldn't leave," she said quietly. Calder nodded. "I meant it." She didn't smile, but she didn't step away either. And in that hospital room, under fluorescent lights and falling snow outside, something fragile began to shift. Fear loosening its grip just enough to make room for hope. The hospital room was small but bright, washed in steady white light, that refused to let fear hide in the corners. Machines hummed softly, not alarming, just present like quiet reminders that help had arrived. Owen lay in the bed, wrapped in clean blankets, an oxygen monitor blinking with calm consistency. His breathing, though still shallow, had slowed. The doctor spoke in a low, reassuring voice, explaining that the infection was serious but treatable. They had caught it in time. Calder listened carefully, asking questions when needed, never interrupting. He signed forms, confirmed dosages, and made sure every instruction was clear. This wasn't panic. This was responsibility. Maisie sat in the chair beside the bed, never letting go of Owen's hand. She watched every movement, every nurse, every adjustment, like her attention alone could keep him safe. A nurse knelt beside her. "You're doing a great job," she said gently. Maisie nodded, unsure how to respond to praise. Compliments weren't currency she trusted. Later, a hospital social worker stopped by. Her tone was professional, but warm, her questions careful. Calder answered honestly, emphasizing one thing again and again: the children must stay together. "We won't separate siblings without cause," the social worker assured him. "Right now, our priority is Owen's health." Maisie's shoulders loosened just a fraction. Hours passed. Snow piled outside the window, but inside the room, time felt suspended, measured only by Beep's footsteps and Owen's steadying breath. At some point near dawn, exhaustion caught up with Maisie. Her head tipped forward, resting against the bed rail. Calder noticed and quietly pulled a blanket over her shoulders. She stirred. "Don't leave," she murmured, half asleep. "I'm right here," Calder said. And he stayed working remotely from his phone, declining calls, ignoring the calendar that once ruled his life. When Owen finally opened his eyes again, clearer this time, he looked at Calder and whispered, "Is this your house?" Calder smiled softly. "Not exactly." Owen frowned in concentration. "It's warm." "Yes," Calder said. "It is." Maisie watched the exchange, something unfamiliar forming behind her eyes. Not relief. Trust, slow, cautious, but real. 3 days later, the doctor returned with a small smile. "The infection is under control," she said. "Owen's responding well. He can be discharged tomorrow with medication and follow-up visits." Owen grinned weakly. "Can we go somewhere nice?" Maisie stiffened immediately. Going somewhere meant uncertainty. Calder met her eyes. "I was thinking," he said carefully, "you could both stay with me for a while, just until everything's settled." Silence stretched between them. Maisie searched his face like she always did, looking for cracks, for conditions. For how long, she asked. "As long as you need," Calder replied, "and only if you want to." Owen brightened. "Does he have cartoons?" Calder laughed quietly. "Yes, plenty." The hospital approved a temporary discharge plan, coordinating with social services to ensure everything was documented. Calder didn't cut corners. He followed every step. The next afternoon, they left together, Owen in a wheelchair per protocol, clutching his worn teddy bear, Maisie walking, close, eyes darting but curious. Calder's car rolled into an underground garage beneath a modern building downtown. The elevator rose silently to the top floor. When the doors opened, Owen's eyes widened. "Is this all yours? Just this floor?" Calder said, smiling. The apartment was spacious but simple, clean lines, warm wood floors, sunlight pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows. No excess, no clutter. A place designed for one man who hadn't known he was waiting for more. Calder showed them the bedroom first. 2 beds, soft sheets, nightlights already plugged in. "This is your room," he said. Owen ran forward and bounced lightly on the mattress. "It's soft." Maisie approached, slowly touching the blanket as if expecting it to vanish. "This is ours, yes," Calder said. "Yours." He opened the closet. New clothes neatly arranged by size. On the lower shelf, books, crayons, a small box of toys. Maisie inhaled sharply. "We didn't ask for this." I know, Calder replied. That's why it's a gift, not a favor. In the kitchen, Gloria Santos, his housekeeper, waited with soup already warming on the stove. She greeted the children like guests, not cases, offering smiles, not questions. As they ate together at the small breakfast table, Owen slurped soup happily. Maisie ate slowly, but she didn't watch the door anymore. And Calder realized something simple and profound. This apartment had finally found its purpose. The first week passed in quiet routines. Owen rested, watched cartoons, and slowly regained his energy. Maisie attended enrollment meetings for school, sitting straight-backed and alert, answering questions with cautious honesty. Calder worked from home, keeping his office door open so the kids could wander in without knocking. Stability began to take shape, which is often when fear returns. Late one evening, Maisie walked down the hallway and overheard Calder on the phone. His voice was low, serious. Yes, I understand the process. I want everything done legally. I don't want them moved again. Maisie stopped breathing. Her mind filled in the blanks the way it always had with worst-case endings. That night, long after Owen fell asleep, Maisie made a decision. She folded Owen's clothes carefully into a backpack, added his teddy bear, a spare sweater, 2 juice boxes she'd saved from the fridge. Then she sat at the kitchen counter and wrote a note in careful, uneven letters. Thank you for letting us stay. Please don't let them take Owen. If someone has to leave, take me. She placed the note where Calder would see it. At the door, she paused, heart-pounding, coat already on. Maisie Calder's voice came from behind her. She turned slowly, eyes wide, braced for rejection. Calder held the note in his hand. His face wasn't angry, it was broken open. No, he said gently. No one is leaving. You said moved, Maisie whispered. I meant the opposite, Calder replied, kneeling in front of her. I'm fighting so you don't get moved. I'm doing this the right way so no one can undo it. Maisie's chin trembled. People always say they'll help, I know, Calder said. That's why I won't just say it. He took a breath. I will show you. Every day. As long as it takes. The silence stretched. Then Maisie's shoulders collapsed forward, and she leaned into him, just slightly testing. Calder wrapped his arms around her, steady and sure. For the first time, Maisie didn't plan an escape. She let herself stay. Life began to slow down in small, careful ways. Mornings developed a rhythm: breakfast at the small kitchen table, Owen insisting on cartoons before medicine, Maisie packing her bag with meticulous precision. Calder worked nearby, laptop open, but attention flexible, ready to pause whenever a voice called his name. Maisie started school 2 weeks later. She wore borrowed confidence like a jacket, slightly too big, polite, observant, rarely speaking unless spoken to. Her teacher praised her focus, though noted how she flinched at sudden sounds and always asked permission twice. At home, Maisie drew. She filled page after page with colored pencils Calder had bought without ceremony. Houses with thick walls, windows glowing yellow, 2 stick figures holding hands. Always 2. One evening after Owen fell asleep mid-cartoon, Maisie sat on the windowsill watching city lights flicker like distant stars. Calder joined her quietly. You don't have to tell me anything, he said. But if you ever want to, I'll listen. Maisie didn't answer at first. Then, without looking at him, she spoke. She said it was temporary. Calder stayed still. Our mom, Maisie continued. She said the building was just until things got better. She always said that. Her voice was calm, not numb, not dramatic, just tired. She'd leave in the mornings to look for work. Sometimes she came back with food. Sometimes she didn't. Maisie swallowed. The last time she said she'd be back that night. Calder waited. She never came back. The words fell softly, but the silence after them was heavy. Maisie explained how she'd waited. 1 night, then 2, then days. How she rationed what little food was left. How she learned which apartments were empty, which dumpsters were safer to check in daylight. She didn't describe fear. She described logistics. Calder felt his chest tighten, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Like someone who had learned feelings were inefficient. I tried not to let Owen see me scared, Maisie added, because then he'd be scared too. Calder's voice was quiet. How old were you? Maisie shrugged. I don't know. I stopped counting birthdays. That did it. Calder turned slightly, not to overwhelm her, but close enough to matter. Maisie, what you did was extraordinary, but you were never supposed to do it alone. She finally looked at him. I didn't have a choice. No, Calder said. You didn't. Tears welled but didn't spill. Maisie wiped her eyes impatiently. I don't want people to think she didn't love us. Calder nodded. Loving someone doesn't always mean they can take care of them. Both things can be true. Maisie leaned back against the glass, breathing slowly. For the first time, she didn't sound like she was defending the past. She sounded like she was letting it rest. The call from Tessa Marlowe came on a Thursday afternoon. Her voice was steady but careful. We've located confirmed information about Maisie and Owen's mother. Calder closed his office door before answering. Is she alive? A pause. No, Tessa said gently. She passed away several months ago. The details were brief, respectful, factual. No sensational language, no judgment. A woman named Janelle Hart, 33, unstable housing. No close relatives able to assume care. Calder thanked Tessa and ended the call. Then he sat very still. He knew what this meant. Not just paperwork, not just timelines. It meant the last thread of waiting, the quiet hope Maisie carried like a secret, would finally snap. That night, Calder didn't rush the conversation. He cooked dinner himself, clumsy but earnest. Owen laughed at his uneven grilled cheese. Maisie smiled politely. After Owen went to bed, Calder asked Maisie to sit with him in the living room. Her posture changed immediately. You found her, she said. Yes, Calder replied. And what I'm about to tell you is hard. Maisie nodded once. Ready? Your mom died, Calder said softly. Before we met. Maisie didn't cry. She stared at the carpet fingers pressed together. How she asked. Calder chose honesty without harm. She got very sick and was alone in the cold. Her body couldn't handle it. Maisie absorbed that in silence. Then came the question Calder feared most. Was it my fault? No, he said immediately, voice firm. Absolutely not. I should have gone looking, she whispered. I stayed because Owen was small. Calder moved closer. You stayed because you were protecting him. That was love. You didn't cause this. The tears came, then quiet, unstoppable. Maisie covered her face with both hands, shoulders shaking without sound. Calder didn't rush her. He waited. When she finally spoke again, her voice was raw. I think I knew. I just didn't want it to be real. Calder nodded. Knowing doesn't make it hurt less. It just means you're human. Maisie wiped her cheeks. Do we tell Owen yes, Calder said. Together, in a way he can understand. She leaned into him, not collapsing, but resting. Trust, not desperation. And in that moment, grief shifted from something she carried alone to something shared. Telling Owen happened the next morning. They sat on the couch, Maisie holding his hand, Calder kneeling in front of them. Calder explained gently that their mom couldn't come back, but that she loved them very much. Owen asked a few questions about stars, about heaven, about whether she could see his drawings. Then he cried for exactly 3 minutes. After that, he asked if they could put her picture in their room. Grief for him came in small waves. For Maisie, it lingered. She grew quieter in the days that followed, not withdrawn, but thoughtful. She spent more time drawing, more time watching Owen sleep. One night, as Calder tucked Owen in, Maisie stood in the doorway. "What happens to us now?" she asked. Calder didn't hesitate. "You stay. Both of you. I'm working with Tessa to make it legal, but even before that, this is your home." Maisie studied his face. "Forever," Calder chose his words carefully. "If that's what you want." She nodded slowly. "I do." The next week, Calder sat across from Tessa again. "I want to adopt them," he said. Tessa smiled softly. "I was hoping you'd say that." She explained the process, lengthy, careful, protective. Home visits, evaluations, court hearings. Calder accepted it all without complaint. At home, he didn't announce the plan like a grand reveal. He asked, "What colors do you like?" Maisie blinked. "For what? For your room," Calder said. "I think it should feel like yours." Owen shouted blue from the couch. Maisie considered. "Yellow," she said finally. Like morning, they painted together that weekend, laughing, smudging color onto each other's sleeves. Owen declared it the best day ever. Later, as they stood in the doorway of the freshly painted room, Maisie slipped her hand into Calder's. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "I know," Calder replied. "But I wanted to." She squeezed his hand once, and for the first time since he'd known her, Maisie smiled without holding anything back. The system didn't move fast. That was the first thing Calder learned. Paperwork arrived in thick folders, background checks, financial disclosures, psychological evaluations, home inspections. Each step was calm, polite, and methodical, but also exhausting. Not once did Calder complain. If the system existed to protect children like Maisie and Owen, then it deserved patience. Tessa Marlowe visited regularly, clipboard always in hand, but eyes attentive. She watched routines more than rooms. How breakfast happened, how homework was handled, how Owen took his medicine on time, how Maisie always sat close enough to reach him without thinking. One afternoon, while Owen napped, Tessa asked Maisie to speak with her privately at the kitchen table. Maisie agreed, but only after glancing at Calder. He nodded. "I'll be right here." Tessa's questions were gentle. School, friends, how she felt living here, what scared her, what made her feel safe. Maisie answered honestly. "I like it here," she said. "It's quiet, and nobody yells." Tessa smiled. "Do you feel safe with Calder?" Maisie didn't hesitate. "Yes." Why? Maisie thought for a moment. "Because he doesn't rush me, and he doesn't make promises he can't explain." That answer went straight into Tessa's notes. Later, Calder had his own interview. He sat across from a psychologist who asked careful questions about motivation, attachment, and long-term plans. "Why adopt?" she asked. "You're single. You have demanding work." Calder answered simply. "Because they need stability. And because my life has room for them." "But why them?" she pressed. Calder didn't reach for anything polished. "Because they're already here, and leaving would break something I don't want broken." That night, after Tessa left, Maisie hovered in the doorway of Calder's office. "Did I say something wrong?" she asked quietly. Calder looked up instantly. "No. Why would you think that people stop liking you when you say the wrong thing?" she said matter-of-factly. Calder closed his laptop. "Maisie, there's no wrong thing you can say that would make me send you away." She studied him, measuring truth the way she always did. "What if they say no?" she asked. Calder answered carefully. "Then we keep going. We don't disappear. And we don't give up on each other." Maisie nodded, accepting that answer for now. Later that night, Calder overheard Maisie in Owen's room. "We're okay," she whispered to him as he slept. "I promise." And Calder realized something unsettling and beautiful. At the same time, Maisie wasn't just waiting for a decision. She was learning how to hope without running. The call came on a gray Monday morning. Tessa's voice was calm, but the words carried weight. "There's been a development. We need to discuss it." Calder's chest tightened. At the meeting, Tessa explained carefully a distant relative, an elderly aunt, had been identified. She lived out of state, had limited mobility, and no prior relationship with the children, but legally she had to be contacted. It doesn't mean they'll be moved, Tessa said quickly. It's just part of due diligence. Calder nodded. I understand. But Maisie heard only one word when Calder explained it at home. Relative. That night, fear returned, not loud, not frantic, quiet, strategic. Maisie waited until the apartment slept. She packed Owen's backpack again. This time she didn't write a note. She planned to leave before dawn. Calder found her sitting on the floor near the door, backpack beside her, staring at the wall. Maisie, he said softly. She didn't jump this time. She just sighed, tired beyond her years. She's family, Maisie said. People like family more than strangers. Calder sat beside her, not blocking the exit. That doesn't mean you have to go, but what if they make us? She asked. I don't want Owen to get used to this and then lose it. Calder understood the logic. It was the same logic that had kept her alive. I can't promise nothing will ever change, he said. But I can promise this: no decision will be made without hearing what you want. Maisie looked at him sharply. They listen to kids, they're supposed to, Calder said, and I'll make sure they do. She hesitated. What if they don't? Calder didn't rush his answer. Then I'll keep standing here. With you. Silence stretched. Maisie leaned forward and rested her head against his shoulder, not collapsing, not desperate, just choosing proximity. I don't want to be brave anymore, she whispered. Calder closed his eyes. You don't have to be. The next week the call came. The aunt declined involvement. She wasn't able to care for children and expressed relief knowing they were safe. When Calder told Maisie, she nodded once, processing. Okay, she said. That night she unpacked the backpack herself, and for the first time she didn't keep it near the door. Months passed. School reports improved. Maisie caught up quickly, especially in reading and art. Her teacher called her quietly brilliant. Owen made friends easily, his laughter filling rooms that once felt too large. Calder attended parent-teacher meetings. He learned how to pack lunches properly. He learned which nights were hardest for Maisie and which routines helped Owen sleep. The home visits continued. The interviews continued. And then one afternoon, Tessa arrived without a clipboard. I think we're ready, she said. The final hearing was scheduled for early winter. The courthouse was smaller than Calder expected. No audience, no drama, just a judge, paperwork, and a quiet seriousness that matched the moment. The judge reviewed the reports carefully. Then she looked at Maisie. Do you understand what adoption means? The judge asked. Maisie nodded. It means choosing. The judge smiled slightly. And do you want Calder Reed to be your legal parent? Maisie glanced at Calder. Not for permission, for confirmation. Yes, she said. I already feel like he is. Owen was asked next. Do you like living with Calder? The judge asked. Owen grinned. Yes. He makes pancakes, and he stays. That was enough. The judge signed the papers. Congratulations, she said. You are now officially a family. Owen jumped up, cheering. Maisie froze, then smiled, tears spilling freely. Calder knelt and hugged them both, overwhelmed by the simplicity of it. Later at home, as they hung coats by the door, Owen looked up at Calder. Can I call you Dad now? He asked. Calder's throat tightened. If you want to. Owen nodded decisively. Okay, Dad. Maisie watched, then quietly added Dad. The word settled into the apartment like something that had always belonged there, and for the first time in his life, Calder understood something profound. He hadn't rescued anyone. They had found each other. The snow returned almost exactly 1 year later. Not the heavy, relentless kind, just a gentle fall that softened the city the way time softens memories. Calder parked the car in front of Briar and Crumb Bakery and turned off the engine. For a moment, none of them moved. Owen pressed his nose to the window. This is the place with the muffins, right? Calder smiled. That's the one. Maisie sat quietly in the back seat, hands folded in her lap. She hadn't been here since that morning, since hunger, since fear, since everything changed. You don't have to go in if you don't want to, Calder said gently. Maisie shook her head. I want to. The bell above the door rang as they stepped inside. Warmth wrapped around them immediately, bread, coffee, cinnamon. The bakery looked exactly the same, and yet nothing felt the same at all. Behind the counter stood Kendra Voss. She looked up, then frowned slightly, recognition flickering into surprise. Her eyes landed on Maisie, clean coat, braided hair, calm posture, holding Calder's hand. For a heartbeat, the past hovered between them. Calder ordered first. 2 hot chocolates, 1 black coffee, and 3 muffins, please. Owen beamed. With extra chocolate. Kendra nodded, then hesitated. I remember you, she said to Maisie, from last winter. Maisie nodded politely. I remember you too. Kendra swallowed. I owe you an apology. I should have asked if you needed help, not questioned you. Maisie considered this, then said something simple and astonishingly generous. It's okay, she said. I'm okay now. Kendra's eyes filled. She placed an extra pastry on the tray. On the house. They sat by the window. Owen laughed, whipped cream smudged across his nose. Calder wiped it away with a napkin, automatic and gentle. Maisie sipped her hot chocolate, slowly watching the snow outside. The glass reflected 3 figures, now not 1. She didn't feel small here anymore. She felt complete. As they stood to leave, Maisie paused and looked back at the pastry case, the same place she once stood, hungry and silent. Then she turned away, without regret. Some chapters didn't need to be reread. Home looked different now. Not because the apartment had changed, but because life had filled it. Shoes lined the entryway, backpacks rested against the wall, drawings covered the fridge, layered and colorful. A calendar marked school events, doctor visits, and 1 bold circle around family movie night. Maisie went straight to her room after the bakery, closing the door quietly. An hour later, she reappeared holding a piece of paper. I made something, she said, extending it toward Calder. It was a drawing more detailed than her earlier ones. 3 figures holding hands in front of a tall building with wide windows. The smallest figure was jumping. The tallest stood slightly bent, as if listening. Above them, in careful block letters, it read, Our family. Calder took the paper like it was priceless. Can we hang it? Maisie asked. In the living room? Of course, he said, where everyone can see it. Owen helped choose the spot, insisting it be right here so people wouldn't miss it. They taped it carefully, stepping back together to inspect their work. It's perfect, Owen declared. Later that night, after Owen fell asleep mid-sentence during a bedtime story, Calder tucked him in and turned off the light. Maisie lingered in the doorway. Dad, she said, still testing the word. Yes, do you ever think about that day? She asked. At the bakery all the time, Calder admitted. What if you hadn't followed me? Calder thought for a moment. I think I would have missed the most important part of my life. Maisie nodded, satisfied. As she turned to go, she hesitated. Thank you. For staying. Calder smiled softly. Thank you for letting me. Outside, the city hummed, busy, unaware, endless. Inside, 3 people shared a quiet that felt earned. And for the first time, Maisie slept without listening for footsteps. Spring came early that year. Snow melted into clear streets. Sunlight lingered longer each afternoon, warming the apartment in ways no heater ever could. Life settled into something ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Owen started soccer. Maisie won an art contest at school, her drawing displayed in the hallway. Calder attended meetings with crayon marks still faint on his hands. One evening, they sat on the couch watching a movie. Owen fell asleep halfway through, head tipped against Calder's shoulder. Maisie noticed. She smiled. Later, as Calder carried Owen to bed, Maisie followed quietly. She adjusted the blanket, a habit she no longer needed, but kept anyway. Back in the living room, Calder stood beneath the drawing. Our family. A year ago, he'd believed success meant scale, bigger projects, higher numbers, wider reach. Now he understood something simpler. Impact wasn't measured in square footage. It was measured in moments. Maisie joined him, leaning against his side. "Dad," she said softly. "Yes, do you think families always start the same way?" Calder shook his head. "I think families start when people choose each other." She considered that, then nodded. "I like ours. So do I." Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere snow would fall again someday. Somewhere a child might still be hungry, still afraid. But in this home tonight, there was warmth that would last. Because sometimes a family doesn't begin with birth. It begins with a sandwich, with a choice, with someone deciding not to walk away. And in choosing to follow a little girl into the snow, Calder Reed had finally found his way home. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.